cartoonist book that this lady just mentioned to me about. If you see on this, you see the first name is not my name. I did all the research for this book. Lots of cartoonists in here. I did all the revisions. And between the time that I turned in my final manuscript and the publisher accepted it, Charles Schulz passed away. So they had to add a couple of lines about the end of his life. Of course, it's a biography. So I guess this Bradley guy wrote those 2 lines. And he gets top billing. So that's one of those little, you're always going to have a grr in your writing career too. So that's one of them.
Yeah.
But this was really fun to write, all these cartoonists. That was fun. The question that came about it though was, what was this called when I mentioned these before? It was work for hire, which means that you agree for a certain price to write the manuscript, turn in however many revisions, and you are paid just one fee. And it was in 2 parts. One when I accepted the work, and the second part when they accepted all the revisions after Charles Schulz died. So it was a certain amount of money. It's called work for hire. I did 4 of them like that. John Grisham, Alexander Bell, cartoonist, and the overview called Depression. Well, it's there. This is just a little overview for those of you who aren't real familiar with all the aspects of publishing. So work for hire, you don't get any royalties for. Okay? Scholastic, they give royalties. Motion picture and the automobile, those were done for a certain advance and then royalties on every copy, which is really great because the librarians love these books and they just buy lots and lots of copies. Not getting as big a checks as I used to, but this is better. Royalties are better. As well as the Writer's Digest book, that was a royalty book too. Now some of the other ones, the Meerkats was a work for hire. That was the first one, but who cares? That was the first one. I just took whatever they gave me. Have you ever felt that way? If they just take. Now, I say all this because sometimes you have to work really hard at all these things that may not be your passion for your what you want to write, but they put my foot in the door for other things. And they gave me the opportunity to have a track record, okay? You can, we're taking just a little bit off topic here, but track record is very important. How many of you enter contests who haven't really published yet? Are you entering contests at least to get wins to be a track record? Are you? Okay. So if you haven't published yet, that's one of the best ways to build a track record is to enter contests and win some contests, go to writing groups, show that you're a serious person who wants to be a serious author, okay? So those books that were work for hire, they put me onto the next level, and eventually they let me do the books I wanted to, that I was passionate about. And you see some of those before you, like the Color Me Bible. That was something I was passionate about because a lot, when my kids were little, the illustrated works of those particular characters were kind of severe looking. So I wanted illustrations that were a little more friendly looking for those characters. My daughter and I put that book together over a lot of years. It gave me the opportunity to write the specifics about what I wanted to write for the workshops, which is called Before You Publish. In the Before You Publish book, there's a little overview about all the different types of publishing: independent publishing, vanity publishing, self-publishing, as well as traditional publishing. You kind of have to have an overview of all of them nowadays. It used to be it was just traditional publishing. When I first started, it was just traditional or vanity, and you didn't want that. Now there's a few gray areas in there, and they work out for people. So the track record books allow me to do what I was passionate about. How many of you are on my newsletter already? When you get my newsletter every other week? A few of you? Just a handful? Well, every 2 weeks or so, I send out a newsletter with a different topic, trying to get writers to get their juices going, blah, blah, blah. It's called the Writer's Chat, and it's very much like what you guys were doing back there when you were milling around. You're talking about your writing, you're talking about, when we have lunch, you'll be talking about your writing, your projects, what you have difficulty with, whether it's point of view or internal dialogue, or what the heck was she thinking about when she said it wasn't real? Well, it is. So, we have an online newsletter. It goes out, it's not a blog, it's just a newsletter. People comment on the topic and I write it and it goes out the next time, every other week. This is a compilation of those particular topics and it's kind of fun. You get to hear from other writers, which is fun because writers are solitary. How many times do you get to talk to your writing about it with anyone except when you're in one of these groups? Your family could care less, couldn't they?
I'd like to talk about it.
Yes. They still don't think you're doing anything real. Right. So this online blog, some people still call it a blog, but it's not. It's just an email chat, and it's just us getting together every 2 weeks in an email form to share ideas and publishing information, etc. So that's what this book's about. I didn't mention it earlier. Thank you for taking an interest. The bylines are something I wanted to talk to you about, and the royalties and the work for hire. Do you have any other questions about any of those three things, work for hire? Any types of, okay. Then we're gonna move on to continue getting people to care about your characters. How do we do that? We've talked about point of view. I think you have a handle on that. I'm confident you're gonna do just fine with that. The next thing is, what's the first sound of the word character?
Care.
Care, there we go. Have you ever thought about that before? You've got to care about your character, don't you? And we talked about the emotional connection, and we need to carry that right through into this next exercise we're going to talk about. How do you put the interesting things about your character that you love, that you're trying to get across to us, into that first page, that first paragraph, that first section that's going to draw the interest? How are you going to do that? Do any of you have some tricks you already use?
An embarrassing trait or moment.
An embarrassing trait. Just start off with that to kind of make
something that makes them seem
vulnerable.
Right.
Or real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else have another idea? Sometimes you can use a brief bit of internal dialogue. Then we hear that character right away.
I like action.
Action.
Some type of an action to start.
That shows what that character is doing. Okay. How does that give us an emotional connection?
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on what the action is.
Okay. So keep that in mind. We're still going to have that emotional connection. How they react to it.
The action.
Have you ever, and we mentioned this before, what we don't like when there's a list of description of the visual or the setting. What about, have you ever opened up a book and you see kind of a description of the character? Like if it were James Bond's, it would be James Bond. It would be he combed back his slick hair and shook his martini, something like that. But it could get on and on and on, and you can't fall into a trap of just listing characteristics to make us care about the character. But there is a trick, and there's a little, Mike. There's a little handout I have.
I'm just gonna divide them up and send them down.
That sounds good.
You didn't know you were gonna have to work so much when he came today, did you? As you look at this little handout, this little list, I want you to keep something in mind from your point of view, and that is making that emotional connection, okay? You can go ahead and read through some of that, but then we'll go back and work it together. It's so hard. I should make them hand them out upside down.
Sorry.
How many of you are teachers, retired teachers? Upside down first, and then we'll turn them over.
You can't peel them apart when you're in a hurry.
Do we have enough? Everybody have one? Keith, you're a publisher. Keith is a publisher. He's here to learn about the writer's perspective. But play with these. See what you might have some fun with it. This will give you an idea of what to look for in people's opening when they submit to you.
Well, she didn't give it to me.
Oh.
She just passed it away. Thanks. Okay.
All right, kids.
happens all the time, and I cut the wallpaper.
So why are we gonna do this exercise about how to make your character more tangible? We want your reader to care about your character. Have you ever, when you're doing your characterizations, a lot of people, there's storyboards, there's all kinds of tricks people use to make a character real. Some people even imagine an actor or an actress, and that kind of gives you a 3D visual and how that person sounds without actually putting that in the story. She looked a lot like Meg Ryan. You know, you don't want to do that, okay? So let's look at this little worksheet. This is gonna give us some insight to how to make an emotional connection. Make your people, your readers care about your character. So let's do this. Think about your characters and their vehicles. Now notice I said vehicles because if you're writing sci-fi, it might not be a traditional type of auto. If you're writing a historical, it'll be a different type of transportation. So I want you to think about whatever you're working on now, or whatever you hope to publish soon, whatever you'd like to work on in your novels. What would your character, or set of characters, main characters, what would their vehicles be like? Let's just go ahead and list it right now. What's this kind of vehicle like? What's this mode of transportation? Give us a little bit, you can list right now. Be sure and include colors, maybe textures, specifics. Buick is stronger than car. Kumquat is stronger than fruit. Is kumquat fruit? Yes.
My dog doesn't drive a car.
It transports itself somehow. So now you gave us a clue. We don't want a clue. Whatever the transportation is, it might be pause. What is the transportation? Whatever the vehicle is, how is that person moving around? How is that character moving? My dog rides in a little red wagon because he's getting so old, he only makes it halfway down the street.
Mine's a horse.
Okay. Is it now here's another twist. Maybe it's not the real vehicle. Maybe it's a different vehicle. Maybe it's in this vehicle because there's a twist in the plot. Let us know any of that. Is there any insight you can give us based on that bit of information? And I used rear view mirror here. What does the character see in the rear view mirror? But maybe it's not a mirror, maybe it's some other way. Maybe they have to actually turn around. Why are we doing this? Why do you want to look at this aspect? What are we going to learn if you list what's in the mirror?
Their background, the reason they do what they do.
Little bit of background, maybe some of the time period. We're looking for setting details. See how it's going to help you layer in other things by just this one fun little exercise. If your character's in a vehicle, what's he see right here? What's he in? What's she in? What's it in? What's around it? If it looked in the mirror, what's behind it? Or if it just had to turn to see what's behind it, what do we see? What does your character see? If it is a mirror, what does your character see in the character? Any facial features? Hair color? What's the kind of clothing? Is that significant? Is it wearing something it shouldn't be wearing? Is that significant? Give us some clues. Okay, the outside, if it just looks out around it altogether. What do we see about seasons, smells? Can your character smell anything? Or is it a locked down kind of airtight container? And why is that? What's on the floorboards? What's on the seats? Are there seats? Do you see where I'm getting at here? When you think about seats or floorboards or what's in a bag beside him or her, what are we learning? What are we learning about those details that you give us?
That could be messy.
Character might be messy, might be just the opposite. Everything has to be exactly in its spot. That gives us insight into your character. Maybe it's all Whopper wrappers across the dash. What does that tell us? The little job site book, do I have it out? Yeah, it's the second tier down, insights from the job site. It always used to amaze me, how many work trucks I'd see with those old burrito wrappers.
Oh.
Across the windshield. I think, wow. A lot of burritos being eaten by those hardworking men out there. Anything scattered along the dash or in the glove box, something that might not should be there? Is there something hidden? If it's a stagecoach, is there something in the strong box being protected? So many things. What about the back seat? Is there a back seat? I guarantee you an older person has a different thing on the back seat, in the back, that back dash, what's that called? Than younger people do.
Had one of those for so long.
What's that?
It was.
Used to
Oh,
ride.
what's it called?
Yes,
I forgot
when
what
we
the
were allowed to do what we
called.
wanted to, we were allowed to ride. Don't get me started on it. I had some crayons melt in the back of one of those cars, and I got
yeah.
so much
I used to
trouble.
get up there
About
and sleep.
1960s.
She used to get up there and sleep.
Going down the road.
Oh, well, animals up there, you know, stuffed animals.
No.
I bet you could, you had to be able to see out of the back, but.
Sometimes there's surprise in the trunk. If your character had something different about the character in the trunk, that's out of character for your character, what would that be in the trunk, hidden? I don't know how much you read about the bio, but my trunk has this in it. Does anybody know what this is?
Work. Belt in, two belt in there.
Like an electrician's.
Here's my snips. There's still something in those
Those are
snips,
metal.
sorry about that. My chubby pencil, which always sticks me if I bend over. And this tape has taken many a tumble out of that pouch. And here's some of the screws I use with my gun. So there's some clues about what's hidden in my trunk.
Drywall.
Anybody have a clue about what I might be doing?
Sometimes you get a little snippy.
Sometimes you get a little snippy because I don't have enough protein and
There
then
you
I
go.
eat one of these protein bars. That's always in my pouch too. Snippy, that's funny. You like the puns.
Well, as the book doctor, that kind of concerns me.
This is for some severe editing, let me tell you. My knees hurt just to think about this. But for a good 10 years, I worked every day with my husband on the roof. We put on metal buildings and put on metal roofs.
Oh.
So I have a collection of stories about insights from the job site all across the big country, Abilene area. And he said, if you're gonna write a story that the guys are gonna read, this is for blue collar guys. And when I give them out to folks who I meet in the jobs, I tell them, put it in your bathroom, because that's where they read. And he said, they have to have big print and lots of pictures. Boys don't want to look for their cheater glasses when they're in their bathrooms. So this big print, this is my big Irishman here, O'Brien. And each one is only a page or two, and it's all about insights from working with Pat on the job sites, okay? That's why I have the pouch in my trunk all the time. Because even today, sometimes he'll say, Miss Robyn, can you bring me a ladder and come help me measure this roof? And I will. Not as often as I used to. I realized that you're really not supposed to start roofing when you're 40. So I gave it up about 3 years ago, most of the time. It's not what I prefer, but I did it, and it gave me a whole book worth of information. So always use what you can, yes.
I'll just say, when I lived in California, I had, an earthquake kit in the back. Well, you know, pillow, blanket, water, a bunch of things. And I was driving to work when we had one of the big earthquakes.
Ah, perfect.
So,
So it was handy.
yeah, fortunately I didn't get stuck or anything, but.
Well, but that's a good thing. If your character is based in that area, that would give us a good clue about the area and your character, and that person is one who is always a little step ahead, always wants to be prepared. Good point. Okay, now you have your list ready? You're gonna look at your list, and you're gonna either use your list as is, and you can tell me what you have, or what I prefer you to do would be to turn it over and use your list to write a little opening paragraph, and see if you can snag us with your character. Because what I'd like to do would be for you to read us a little bit of your list, and then turn it over and read us a little bit of how you use your list. You didn't know you were gonna do so much work this morning, did you? See, I have an easy job. So look at your list that you made, get familiar with the character you think you're building, and then turn it over and write us an opening paragraph and make us wowed by your character and a particular point of view. Maybe about 10 minutes. I won't rush it.